You are watching Tech and AI Live. Next, we have a fantastic panel discussion on women leaders' perspectives on enterprise AI. Joining us today for this panel are Dr. Sutrapathy, Managing Director, Global GTM Lead, Data, AI, ML, and Analytics at Accenture, and Asha Saxena, Founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI. Sue has worked in senior leadership positions for the past 27 years with companies in over 50 countries. Recently, as managing director in data analytics, business insights, and global services at NTT Data. Her global span covers multiple sectors, including healthcare, life sciences, manufacturing, supply chain, transformation, telecom, international business, public sector, retail and consumer product goods, and consumer insights. Asha is the founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI, an exclusive mastermind group for women leaders in data and AI. She's helping them succeed both personally and professionally. She is also a professor at Columbia University in NYC, teaching graduate students healthcare consulting and entrepreneurship. So, welcome, Sue and Asha. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. So why don't we get started into the first question? I know we've got a lot to get through today. And Sue, I'm going to come to you first. So as a female leader in this space, what does business-wide AI look like?
Oh, thank you. And I'm excited to be here. So, I was thinking about my 27 years of experience as you were doing the introduction, and really a couple of things that I wanted to point out. One is, as a female leader, I call it the trifecta. I look at the technology, the process, and the people. And in that, I look at something that's very common, irrespective of whether you're female or male, which is what is your business strategy? What is your roadmap and how do you prioritize? I think, what technology are you going to be using, especially when you're talking about AI? Are you going to be using deep learning? Are you using machine learning, right? And I'll come to that. Those are the key aspects in business-wide AI and how you can actually spread business. But this actually goes far beyond technology and process. This is about the people and bringing people along in that journey when you're trying to establish a business-wide AI platform. And while your data scientists, your data analysts, your data engineers are critical people in actually establishing the core components of what business-wide AI can do for you, that is their skill sets. The key here is, how do you bring people who have historically either been marginalized or they've been siloed. And that's where I think the female leadership piece comes in. At Accenture, our CEO is Julie Sweet, and she is very, very keen and has embedded key principles throughout Accenture, where there are training programs, skill sets, et cetera, where people of all different age groups, of different races, of different ethnicities, we are a 780,000 employee organization, global organization. So leadership and how leadership roles and encourages those who haven't had the opportunities and providing them the opportunities to train them to become female leaders. So a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. You need to have not only the right team skill sets, you also need to have the right team. I'm sure we're going to come to this. And I think part of the other pieces are, how do you integrate? So very quickly, I think the first thing around business-wide AI would be, what is it that you're trying to do with the business-wide AI? What are you trying to learn and problem solve for? How do you plan for it? And in that planning phase, are you including females across the organization and training them to be leaders? I talked about, the core aspects of what AI can do for you. I just talked about machine learning, which is what a lot of people do actually in different organizations, especially in large global organizations, where you can take digestible, contextual information and data, and there's supervised learning. So I don't want to go into all of that detail. And then deep learning. Deep learning is really about neural networks and getting to know the human behavior and kind of mirroring that through your deep learning programs. I think the key again here is, and I'm going to end this fairly soon, is there is explosion of data. There is a need to digest the data. There's a need to take that data into bite-sized bits whether you're doing a data model or whether you're trying to do analytics or integrate analytics for a particular project, whatever it may be. You need to govern that data, you need to deploy that data, you need to have partnership, and you need to have accessibility to the right kind of data. But in all of this, going back to the critical where you began with this question around female leadership, it is about, there are four different, I've framed it into four different categories. You're a leader in this space, you're a planner in the space, you're an executor in the space, or you're an emerging company in the space. Nowhere, when you look at Harvard Business Review, you look at Gartner, you look at all these different IDC, you look at all these reports, is there specific details about what it is to involve female leadership? And so I think part of it also begins with how women are being exposed to data and science, especially in STEM programs that are instituted at least in North America and other parts of the world as well. And then how do you really bring them along? Because when I look at data, less than 15% of the total global population is actually involved in this. So I'm going to stop there because I can talk about this, about business-wide AI and female leadership. But we are seeing about 5 or 6 female leaders globally who have actually made a dent. And I'm not going to name all of them, but Andrea is one of them. So I shouldn't name all of them. But if you go look at the reports, there are these female leaders, but they're few and far between. So we need to bring them along in this journey at different levels, and probably begin at the college level or even earlier at the high school level.
Brilliant, thank you. And obviously, you spoke a lot there about leadership and female leadership specifically. So, Asha, just thinking about that leadership, how can different leaders encourage the use of AI to improve accessibility of data in the enterprise?
We always say data is about culture. Do you have an organization has the culture to understand the data, consume the data, and AI is the application. Truly, how organizations are going to really use data and AI to emphasize the growth within the organization. And Sue mentioned very important points about if you truly want to be an enterprise-wide transformational company who's really embracing data and AI, the culture is the key, and it starts from diversity. So Sue and I spoke about, I stand for, the Women Leaders in Data and AI stands for promoting women leaders in Fortune 1000 companies. But Sue beautifully mentioned that it's not only just about women, but it's also about diversity in age, color, and so on. We had to start a journey from somewhere. And our organization really stands for making sure that, especially as we are building the digital world, we live in the world now, everything from how we consume, any kind of consumer product goods. Could be how we shop for our clothes, or how we shop for food, or for movies, or just go to Amazon, right? And how the recommendation engine helps us pick the right products. Everything is run by algorithm, and they say only 12% of women are coding. They say anywhere from 12 to 18% of women are coding these algorithms, which is a problem, because then you're building a digital world which is biased. And so it is so critical, more than ever, that we have diversity and we have women leaders on the seat and making decisions. And when I speak about the culture, organizations have to specifically pay attention to the fact that diversity is key. Sue spoke about Julie Sweet, who's really made that as a mandatory charter to create diversity. And there are some organizations who are really taking keen interest in making sure diversity, and especially women leaders, are on the table now than ever before, because this is a critical time, especially if you're looking at transformation. You cannot do the transformation without having diversity. There are women, and I think the point women leader organizations are making now is that there are women now. They're not enough, but when the women who are there in mid managers or even in the senior position need to be recognized and given the power. So even when they get to a point where in their career, when they are sitting in the seat, they're still lonely, and they don't have a lot of peers who are, there to support them. So I think when I started, I've spent 30 years in this career. And when I started this organization, the mission was to really bring senior leaders together so that not only that they can provide the peer-to-peer support for each other, but also be there to support and promote each other. And I think, Catherine, organization or conferences like this is so critical to make sure that the visibility is there for the women leaders who are already there, so that they can continue making a dent and making an impact in whatever position they are. The whole digital transformation, the data transformation, the AI journey will be incomplete and will not be effective if you don't have diversity. And it is a critical piece of starting the journey on the transformation.
No, definitely. I think it's really, obviously, really important for all industries to have this kind of diverse thought and diverse things. But with AI, you've got people creating algorithms, and without diversity, they just everything will become inherently biased. And I think it is a big problem that needs tackling. I think, speaking kind of problems, obviously this is kind of moving a little bit away from kind of women in AI. But Sue, what happens when AI can't solve problems? What do different leaders and data scientists need to do then?
Oh, I love this question. Thank you for asking this question. So I think, I'm going to go back to my part of my response in the first question. I began by saying this, the trifecta: this technology, this process, and this people. The dependency on technology has incrementally gone up, especially with COVID, right? We are doing this virtually, for example, today. And I think part of our dependency on AI to tell us, whether it's machine learning, supervised learning, whether it's deep learning, whatever it is, we believe that to some extent, there's certain processes that can be substituted, that AI is much faster, it's more accurate, it can actually detect errors, et cetera, et cetera. So there are components and benefits that AI can provide and does provide. I think the fallacy that AI is going to actually substitute human thinking, even though I'm sure there's a hot debate going on, especially with those who are deep in deep learning, no pun intended. You can mirror as much as possible the human behavior and your brain. But at the same time, there are certain things that AI just cannot do. And what do I mean by that? Who is building the architecture? People are. It's humans. How do you design it? It's humans. What input is being provided? It's humans, right? So my question really, and I ask this sometimes of myself, is our reliance on AI shouldn't be to the extent where we believe that everything that is coming out of machine learning, deep learning, whatever it is that you're using, that is the only way to do it. There is a human brain where we can actually make a determination on what to use, when to use, how to deploy, how to govern. That doesn't come from AI, right? So AI is an enabler. It's a tool. It helps you get faster, perhaps more accurate. So I would put it more in the KPIs. What are the key KPIs, of which, of course, finance would be one of them. Of course, time, speed, adoption, all of that would be would be part of your KPIs. But what can AI not do depends on how you want and have established AI within your business. Why in the first place are you using AI? So I go back again to my first question and how I began at the onset of my response. I said, what is your business strategy? Because in many different businesses, you'll find strategy here and you'll find data scientists and the engineers on the other side. There are inherent silos, especially when you're talking with large global companies, right? This is natural. This is not about any particular company. How do you meld those two, and how do you come to that prioritized roadmap? I was very particular when I said prioritized roadmap. Every business has a roadmap. What are the priorities where you're going to really use AI, and why? What are the benefits of using AI? And yes, are you still thinking that as a result of that, you are going to do any kind of cost savings? There may be labor that you could redeploy. Yes, that does happen. But that doesn't mean you substitute it. So there are many things that AI cannot do. I already mentioned that, right? I mentioned, the whole framework of how you want to set your business up, the whole framework of how you want to govern your data, the whole framework of the whole aspect of what goes inside, who's actually representing your data. It is about representation, right? How are you building that architecture? What is the input? What is the output that you're expecting? All of that AI cannot do. So I'm very cautious, whether it's AI, whether it's a new computer, whether it's our cell phones, whatever, there'll always be the newer and latest version. Our dependencies on it has gone up, and it will still keep going up, but it cannot be to the point where, there are certain things where we actually, to a large extent, dictate how that system is going to function and what features we want within it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. And so we have had some questions come in from the audience. So Asha, there's one for you, which I think links perfectly into kind of that diversity chat that we had earlier. So what does the right team look like?
So it's a lot of leaders would ask, when I'm talking to them about what is the right team and what is the right structure of the team. A lot of times when organizations are looking to jump on the wavelength of adopting AI, they will ask me, should we just get data scientists because we want to start building, the models? And I always say that the very first thing you need to do, and I wrote a book called The AI Factor, which is coming out in September. And in my book, I talk about the power quadrant. And I always say that first you need to really understand where you are. What strategy are you really thinking about? Is it, the fourth quadrant I talk about is optimizer. You are saying that we want to be an optimizer. We want to start the models on cost saving, or we want to be an innovator. We want to launch new products and get into R&D, or we want to be an extender, which is I want to go get market share. I want to go acquire organization or acquire market share. Or I want to be truly a multiplier organization where we are either changing the game. We are game changing mode where we're going to change the industry. So Uber was focusing on just ride share. But then they said, you know what? We want to be the game changer and we want to create Uber Eats. So a multiplier company would change the game and create something new. So before you start thinking about the team, it's very important you understand what is your power quadrant? Where do you sit? And it's okay to be an optimizer. You don't have to rush to be a multiplier if you're not ready. Really think about where you are sitting in the organization. What is your, business strategy? And where do you want to go before you jump right onto the team? Once you know what your power quadrant is, or where do you sit, then you think about, do I have the right structure of the team? Do I have the data engineers? Do I have the right infrastructure team to provide me the infrastructure? And then you go to the data scientist. Just going out and hiring 10 PhD students who are going to become your data scientist is usually not the best approach. Your best approach is to really know where you are starting from, what your business strategy is, and then hire for that.
Okay, brilliant. So I suppose this kind of links to that, and especially with the whole diversity kind of topic we've been on, Sue. So someone's asked, can AI overcome skill shortages, especially the inclusion of women and data in AI? Is that something that you think the technology has the capability to do?
Yes, to some extent, yes. Currently people are globally using AI to meet certain demands, and that does include redeploying your current labor force, right? So it gives you the opportunity to actually prioritize and actually get to your roadmap faster. And making it very simplistic, it's obviously much more complex than that. But I think a couple of things that Asha said is very, very critical. One is, where are you sitting? What is your power quadrant? I love that. I love what she said, because that is very important to reflect and take a look at it. I think to answer your question that just came through is, where are you in this journey? And what I mean by that is, where are you in your AI readiness journey? There are components of change management that needs to be embedded along with quality lean management, not because I have a bias towards lean, because I've been a practitioner of lean or of OCM with data and analytics. So I think the question about labor shortages and whether or not women leaders can be embedded. I think the key thing here is in messaging. Are women critical to your business? And if not, the question would be, why not? They are 50% of the world's population, right? So what are we doing as globally, or even within your nation, or within your region, within your community, to promote that? I think that that's one. Women are key to scaling up. You see women leadership interspersed throughout, globally throughout, but they need to be scaled up in AI and data science. And it needs to be viewed as something where it is a necessity and it needs to be integrated. 67%, and I'm not making these numbers up. I know Asha a little bit, and Asha and I share one thing in common, if I may say so, and that is we are both data geeks. We both love numbers, right? So we read voraciously, and the Wilda actually provides that forum for us. That's what Asha has provided to a whole host of us. It does get lonely. We haven't reached that glass ceiling yet, but the higher up you go, it does get lonely. So I think to your question is, in that AI readiness, what are you trying to do with AI, and how are you trying to accelerate that experience? How mature are you, right? And so that goes back to her power quadrant. Where are you? Where do you want to go? How are you going to embed some of these management tools that are out there, whether it's lean or quality management, change management, project, whatever it is? That's the people side of it with the technology side of it, right? I think the other part of it, and I think is, there are two things. I was saying 67% of women actually have said that this comes from HBR, from Harvard Business Review, that they are very, very keen to be part of data and AI, but they only want jobs that are very result focused, that have an impact. 61% in that same survey said that they are, focused more and geared more towards that. So if the jobs that are provided to them, the opportunities that are provided to them in this space are not what they perceive to be impactful, and what I mean by that is you're a worker bee. And there's no harm in being worker bees, because we all began by being worker bees, right? At some point in our lives, right? And then eventually we figured out what it is that we wanted to do, and we grew up. At least someone like me, grew up. But not everybody has those opportunities. It's not a level playing field. We are still working in a fairly homogeneous team sometimes, right? In order to make any kind of disruption, you need to have a non-homogeneous team, which is what Asha was talking about, which is what I refer to, which is diversity, which is inclusion, which is giving the opportunities to, upskill yourself, to provide that learning. And what if you're not a global company? What if you're a small company of 100 people? Do you not give them that opportunity? Of course you do. Do we rely on government? We don't need to rely on government. This is where leaders in the community, this is where forums, this is the opportunity that, for example, you're providing. This is where Wilda, comes in. We are creating those spaces, but we cannot create those spaces alone, because we need funding, we need visibility, we need recognition, we need awards. That is something, frankly, that you need to come out of your safe space and say, I'm okay with that. And I'll end with this. I'll give you a very concrete example. Not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, Asha called me and she said something about awards. And I said, but you know what? I am not so keen. It reminds me that of my childhood. You do this and you get a lollipop, right? But she actually made a lot of sense. And I had to reflect on it. And I said, where is the visibility of all the work that we collectively are doing? If there are people like me who shy away from being recognized, recognition is a good thing. Recognition means that you've done something, right? Whatever that may be. It may be a small iota, it may be 0.05%, but that is important. This is where you actually can learn. It's a teaching moment, it's a learning moment for someone like me from a peer. That is also important, right? Because we are still learning. We are leaders, but we are also learning. There's continuous learning here. So I hope I answered that question from the audience, but I'll just end there.
No, definitely. And I think we've definitely got a really good idea of what the best possible team is to create and how to kind of kickstart that team. So Asha, I'll give this next one to you. With this once you have this perfect team, when actually is the right time to adopt an AI initiative?
And I'm going to address that, but I want to actually comment on what Sue said on recognition. It is such an important thing, and think that a lot of organizations are promoting women now. I want to talk about equity. So if we have a woman leader who is at a C-suite now, but truly does she have equity? Does she have the power to create the change? And that's such an important piece. When we started the organization, the mission was to bring the C-suite leader together, and the goal was to make sure that they were strong and powerful so they can create that change within their organization. And what we realized was these leaders were lonely. They were one out of the seven men on the executive team. So the question is that organizations, are they truly empowering the women to make the decision? And when they give them that role, they're giving that autonomy to them to make sure that they can create the change. So it shouldn't be just for the sake of creating diversity. It should be truly giving them equity and giving them the autonomy to create the change. Because as we all know, diversity brings a lot more strength in any organization. There's a lot of research done about how women leaders can create higher growth, even they're sitting on the boards or they're in the leadership role. So I think having that is so critical, is that not just pushing the women just ahead, just for the sake of getting your numbers right, but truly giving them autonomy to create the change. I know, Sue, you're smiling because we've seen this over and over again with the women we meet within our organization. And the second thing, which I think is really important, is the awards. It's not about just the award, it's about creating role models. And I think when I was talking to Sue about this, Wilder's award is on November 3rd this year in New York City. And we recognize women leaders in 6 different categories under data and 6 different categories under AI. And the reason we recognize them is because there's so many women, and we get applications. And I would say, Catherine and York, that any listener who's listening to this should really nominate themselves and somebody they know, because it's so important that women get nominated. And that's what I was saying to Sue. You should not wait for someone else to nominate you. You should nominate yourself because you deserve it. I know. And Sue is so humble, and her whole thing was like, that doesn't look right. And I said, no. So I think that we should not be afraid to nominate ourselves, because every woman who have gotten to the senior leadership role, they have really, really charted the path for so many others. And we need to showcase these women leaders and recognize them. And I think this award, which we do in November 3rd in New York City, is really the symbol of saying that there are enough women who have gotten there, and we applaud them. And these are the women who are paying forward. And that's why I think, Sue, I say that please nominate yourself, because you are becoming role model for 1,000 others who will come after you. So you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for so many others. And I think that is such an important piece, which we all, they say that when the job comes, and this is a research which we actually talk about a lot, is that the women, when a job comes, a woman wants to make sure that she matches 100%, and only then she applies for a senior role. Whereas men can match 60% and they'll apply and they aim higher. And women are so humble that they wait till they get 100% and then they may apply for the job. So I think there's a lot of humbleness in women leaders. And I think awards is just one platform to recognize them. So I think to what you were saying, Sue, those two are very important point that we talk about. And I think the audience should hear about it too. And then when you have the team, the diverse team, it's really important when you have the diverse team. So Catherine, to your question, once you get the team right, it is important to know, and again, I'm going to just refer to the book I wrote. I talk about power zone. And the reason I talk about that is that once you have the right team, you need to know, do you have the right question you're answering? Do you truly understand what the problem you're trying to solve? If you don't ask good questions, you don't get good answers. So it's really important that you ask good questions from the data. And then you go and see, do you have the data for the question you're trying to answer? A lot of times I would have clients who would say to me, we've got so much data, what do we do with it? And I always say, do you know what the question is? What is the question you're trying to answer? So having good questions is really important to get the right answer. And then you go out and collect the data that's required. And with the data you have internally or externally, So you really want to look at what data you can get. And then you have to always think about the value. You cannot, as engineers, as the technologists, we get so excited about the technology that we forget the value. So I always emphasize, I was talking to our CTO yesterday, and I was telling him, I said, you're launching this initiative. What is the value? And he's like, oh, the business calculates the value. And I said, no, as a technology leader, you need to think about the value first. You cannot start an initiative until you can define the value. And then you prioritize what is the highest value initiative which would help the business create the growth they're looking for. It could be growth or savings, but really you need to quantify. And if you can't quantify it, you can't go for the budget. You can't go and ask for the budget unless you can quantify the value. IT is no longer the cost center. IT can really turn the coin by becoming the growth center or the strategy engine for organization because of data and AI. And I truly believe that if the leaders, the technology leaders, really change their mindset to be the business leader and really start calculating the value, that's how they go to the next step of really identifying the right initiative.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. But unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap it up there. There's only so much that you can cram into half an hour. But thank you so much, Asha and Sue, for joining us today. It's been really great to talk about such an important topic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us. And Sue, I enjoyed sharing the stage with you. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. I've been, we've been trying to do this for a while, and I said, I got to bring my, my women in leadership data analytics founder here. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. And thanks to the audience for watching. Make sure you stay tuned to check out the rest of the speakers that we've got here for Tech and AI Live.